Hey, this is episode 1 of a series I'd like to call Finding FI. FI, or FI, stands for Financial Independence. The goal of this series is to help share perspective on how to build better personal finance. Now, I know a lot of us grew up being taught it's impolite to talk about finances. It's made us weird and shy and tiptoe when we talk about money, including myself. But if you don't know, you'll never grow. So respectfully, let's get impolite. First off, to be clear, I'm not a millionaire, but God willing, I will be, and I think you can too. I'm not a trust fund baby. My parents grew up in poverty, immigrated to this country and worked for years in factories. I grew up with 2 other siblings in a 2-bedroom apartment that we grew up in until essentially I graduated from high school. I worked my ass off academically so I could get scholarship to get tuition covered for college. And the rest, well, are loans. So how does someone like me become a millionaire? More importantly, how can I build wealth for generations to come? Well, you learn what rich people do. With the help of my uber frugal financial advisor for fun of a brother, I was able to be guided with financial strategies to help better ourselves and the family. My number 1 strategy, investing in stocks. And no, investing does not equate to gambling. Trust me, I used to think that too, but it doesn't have to be dangerous. Let me explain. Have you ever hidden money away from yourself? Like putting $10 away somewhere random, maybe in a book, and finding it later, being super excited about it? But what if instead of $10, you tucked away $100 instead? And instead of a book, you put that $100 into a regular savings account. In a year, you would find an additional penny. That's 0.01% annual percentage yield, or APY. Keep that money in there, forget about it, and with the power of compounding interest, in 30 years, you would get, well, $100.30. Now, what if you put $100 into a high yield savings account? In a year, you would get an additional maybe $5 with 5% APY. Keep that money in there and forget about it for 30 years, let it grow, and it'll compound to $432 and some change. All right, that's better than 30 cents, but it gets better. Now, what if instead of a high yield savings account, you put that $100 in stocks, like a fairly stable, reliable index fund that sustains itself even through recessions at a rate of 7 to 10% return, something like the S&P 500. Well, hide that money for 30 years, let it grow and compound with a 7% return, and you would get, well, $761 and some change, or if at 10% return, then $1,744 and some change. With investing, you've essentially turned that $100 into $700 or $1,700 with the power of time and compounding interest. So let's optimize that. Now, instead of $100, what if you put slowly over years $100,000 into the S&P 500? Let it compound and grow over 30 years, at which time you hope to retire. You don't leave it alone, you additionally help it grow by tucking away, let's say, $6,000 every year, Roth IRA. And well, in 30 years time, if you do all that, well, with the return at 7%, you would get $1.3 million or so. Ideally at 10%, well, you'd get something like 2.7 million. So what does that have to do with me and my story? Well, let's just say over the years, since my first job in high school at Target, to the jobs in between, to 7 years working full-time as a PA, I've managed to slowly tuck away and hide that money up to that amount, and then some. And listen, I get it. Having a high income profession definitely is advantageous. But the great thing you learn about the FI community is that there's people out there who are reaching financial independence that aren't necessarily making 6 figures. Even being a public school teacher. It's not easy, but I'm saying it's possible. To be clear, I definitely have not reached FI yet. I still have a bunch of student loans. I'm still playing the game of finding current streams of income to sustain myself. I'm not a financial expert or advisor. I'm definitely not perfect with my finances, and I'm still learning quite a bit. But I figured this is something we should all know, if you don't know already, because I wish this was taught in high school. And I might have done things differently earlier and leveraged time as a very valuable asset. So the goal of the series is to share these strategies that I'm using that maybe you can adopt to help you and your family. And since I'm still learning a lot, if you have strategies that you're finding as well, I'd be happy to hear about them. So stick with me, hit the follow if you haven't already, and let's see how we can build better financial fitness together. Let's get it!